Hello everybody. In the previous videos we looked at how we could create some of our own custom trees and put them into our environment. If I take a look at this level here that I'm creating, I can see that I've got some terrain here, we've got some vegetation. Of course, we've got a bunch of student work here with these various models of houses. The sky, however, the sky is very boring right now because it's currently just this gray color. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how we can use skyboxes to get some really nice sky effects in our levels in Unity. And as with so many other assets that you might be using in your Unity projects, of course there's a lot of resources available on Unity's asset store. So for instance, if we just look up Skybox, you'll see that there are a lot of different skyboxes that have already been created for you that you can import into your projects and use. And of course there are some that you can pay for, and then there are also some free assets that you can just try out that might work very well for your project. I'm going to return to Unity here, and actually we'll go ahead and download one of these skyboxes. I'm going to go to the asset store. I'm already logged in, I believe, so what I can do is go to My Assets and just look at some of the skyboxes I have downloaded before. So I'm just going to scroll down and take a look at some of these assets that I've used in the past, and perhaps I'll go ahead and try this one, the Fantasy Skybox free. So I'll go ahead and import that in. And for the sake of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and import all of this. You can see that there's actually quite a bit of content here, but I'll go ahead and just bring it all in. So I've finished importing it in. I'm going to go back to my scene here, and we'll go ahead and take a quick look at what we've brought in here. So you'll notice that I now have this folder called Fantasy Skybox Free, and we can go ahead and take a look at the contents in it. And you can see that there are a lot of different options here for trying out for our skyboxes. Let's go ahead and try some of these out. So we'll see how to apply them in our scene here. What I'm going to do is go to Window, Rendering, Render Settings, and then in the Lighting tab that comes up, you'll see that there's this field here called Skybox Material. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and then I'll pick one of these skyboxes to try out. So perhaps I will try out, well, we can take a look at a couple of these, but let's go ahead and try out this one here. Select it, and we can go ahead and close that, and you can see that we now have this skybox in our scene. And if we play our level here, we are unfortunately not seeing our skybox. So the issue currently is that we see the skybox in our environment here, in our working view, but in our game we're not seeing it. We're still seeing this gray. And apparently the issue is this. We need to select our camera, and then here's our background color, which is currently set to gray, which is why we see the gray when we have our camera selected, or why we see gray when we go to our game view. What we need to do is go to this clear flags where it's currently set to solid color, and change it to Skybox. And you'll see, in fact, now our game view will have that Skybox assigned to it. Let's go ahead and take a look at this and see how it looks. And there it is with this sky. Now that we've applied that, of course, we could try a bunch of different skies. I kind of like this one, actually, for this environment. But we can go back to our window, rendering, render settings, and try out some of these other skies that came with this package. For instance, there are some of these dark scenes here that we can take a look at. Kind of like the stylized approach of these clouds, actually. In fact, we can take a look at a number of these different skies. Now, we're currently looking in this package in this classic folder because there are a number of different ways of accomplishing these skyboxes, and you'll see that there's a bunch of other folders with some other skies that we can also try out and select from. Maybe we try out one of these as well. Notice that instead of just clicking in here and then selecting, I can also drag and drop these in. So for instance, we can take this one here and drag it and drop it in there and check it out. So that's how you could very easily download from the asset store Skyboxes and then apply them to your projects. But let's take a look also at how maybe we could create some of our own Skyboxes. Now, one thing I'd like to point out to you is that we can select these images in here. Let's find one that we want to open up. Kind of like perhaps, maybe this one here. And if I right click on it and say open, it'll open it up in some software that will allow us to view what the actual image looks like that's being used. We can also right click on it and go to show and explore, and that will show us where the file exists on our computer and in our project. And then when I do that, I can go ahead and easily open it up in something like Photoshop. So here's that same image opened up in Photoshop. Now, I did mention a little earlier that there are some different ways of creating these skyboxes. You'll notice that the image that I currently have selected here is set up in the inspector. You'll see that it's a texture type default, texture shape 2D, with a wrap mode of clamp, and so on. And then we also have, I believe this would be the actual shader using using that particular image, and it has been set to Skybox Panoramic. So that is one way that we could apply our own images to use as skyboxes. Now if we go to the classic, you'll notice that these have been set up a little bit differently, so that if I select this image here, Actually, so it gets a little bit confusing here. We've got, for each one of these, we've got two different nodes here. And you'll notice that when I select this one here, it's been set up to a texture shape of cube. And then this other node here has been set to Skybox cube map. So these are two different things, although they're using that same image. Now, if I right click on this and I say open, you'll see that this image is different than those other images because it is a cube map. In fact, you could imagine this as being a cube that could fold, where this edge will meet with this edge will meet with this edge. So this will be the top, and then this, and this one, or sorry, actually these ones here will be, let's say, along the horizon here, wrapping around. This side of the map will wrap around and meet this side, and then these edges will meet, and then these two edges will meet. And in fact, if you think about it, then this edge will meet with this edge here. So you have to envision this as a cube that folds and then creates the sky in your environment. And if we return back to Unity and we want to take a look at this image, or maybe one of these other images here, perhaps I will try this one here, let's say. I'm going to find it in Explore, and I'll try opening up that one as well. Notice it's a PNG file, opening up that as well in Photoshop. So let's see how we can use this as a template to create our own skybox. I'm going to create a new layer here in Photoshop, and I'm going to drop white color into that, and perhaps I'll make another layer, and in here I'm going to go ahead and render out, do this render clouds, go to image adjustment levels, and I'm just going to adjust the levels a little bit, get some nice contrast here. This will be a good start for creating a brand new brush that I'm going to use for creating my clouds. Now that I've created these clouds here, what I'm going to do is select this selection tool and perhaps select a circular area of it, maybe something like that. Place it in an area that I think might work well for this brush that I'm going to be creating. And on this layer, I am going to create a mask. This is something kind of like an alpha channel here in Photoshop, but it's specific to this layer here. What I can do is blur that. To soften its edges some. Perhaps something like that. And now I'm going to, I think I'll merge these two layers and define a brand new brush by selecting the area that I want my brush to encompass, perhaps something like that. I will go to Edit, Define Brush Preset. And I'm going to give it a name so that perhaps I can use it again later. And now we have a brand new brush. So if I paint in here, you'll see, let me switch the color over to black, that I can quickly and easily draw using this as a brush. Make it smaller. This will be a good brush for creating clouds. I'm done with this layer. I'm going to go ahead and put it there into the garbage, and we'll go from there. So now that I've created a brush, let's see what else we can do with that. I'll go ahead and create another layer, and for the time being I'm going to go ahead and just drop a black color in here, make another layer, switch my foreground color to white, And we'll just play around a little bit with this brush. You can see I can paint with it like this. I can click on it individually like that, and already like that I could start making clouds if I want. But what I'm going to do is go to the brush settings and just add some variation in it by changing the spacing of it, maybe adding some jitter to get some different sizes, a little bit of randomization happening there. We can add some angle jitter, which will rotate it some, again adding some variation. And you can see that already we're going to be able to create some pretty nice clouds pretty quickly, pretty easily. Maybe add a little scatter in there. And I think that brush will work pretty well. I might make it a little smaller still. But I think that that will work out well for creating clouds for my skybox. So now that I've got my brush, maybe I'll go ahead and get rid of these two layers. Take a look at this example layer again. And you'll notice that they put a gradient in here, and I think that can work quite effectively. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. We'll make a gradient for our sky here. I'm going to define two colors for it. Maybe we'll select also a nice light blue color for lower on the horizon, maybe something like this. Something like that. And another color, which will be a darker blue. Maybe color shifted a little. Oh, perhaps something like that. And we can try that out and see how that works for us. Now what I'm going to do is come over here and change from my paint bucket tool to my gradient tool, and holding down shift so that I get this gradient exactly on the vertical here, I'll just draw a nice gradient there. I think that should work. I think another thing I'll do is come back over here, and I'm going to create another mask on this, just so that we're masking out that area so that we know where we're going to be drawing. And I'll create another layer here, and now start drawing some of my clouds. Go back to my brush tool. And just start drawing some of these in here. So I painted a little bit more, painted some more clouds, and I've switched over to my eraser tool, and I'm actually still using that very same brush that I created to make these clouds. And what I'm going to do is just selectively erase some of it. You can see that by erasing the bottom part, it kind of makes it a little bit darker, which is kind of nice. Roughens it up a little bit as well. I think that helps for the effect. And perhaps that will be good. Let's go ahead and give that a try. What I'm going to do is merge my layers and save this image. And let's go ahead and go back to Unity. So now that we're back in Unity, and I can see my texture here because I saved it in the same place as all these other textures, all these other skyboxes. I'm going to select it, go over here to the inspector, and under texture shape, instead of 2D, I'm going to set it to cube. I'm also going to check alpha is transparency. I actually don't know how important that is, but I notice that these other ones have it set to that, so I'll set it to that as well. Now that I clicked off of it, it asks if I want to apply this. I could have just clicked on apply here as well, but we'll go ahead and apply it. You can see that the icon changed there a little bit. And then this is very important. This itself is not going to work. What you'll see is if I go to Window, Rendering, Lighting Settings, and I try to drag that and drop it in here to the Skybox material, you'll see that it's not allowing me to do that. That is because we actually need to create a material for our Skybox. So I'm going to right-click in here, go to Create Material. It just created a standard material, but we're going to change that. Rather than being a standard shader, we'll go to the drop-down, pick Skybox, and in this case we're going to select Cube Map. Let's go ahead and give our material a name. I'm just going to call it My Sky. And with the material selected, I'm going to take my texture and drag it into the Cube Map property of this material. And we now have a sky that we can apply, that we created in Photoshop, that we can apply to our levels. So what I'm going to do is once again go back to Window, Rendering, Lighting Settings, drag the material that we just created in Photoshop into the Skybox material, and here it is using what we just created moments ago in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and play this and take a look at it and see how our sky looks. It looks pretty good. So that's how you can use skyboxes in your levels, skyboxes that you have downloaded from the asset store, or how you can actually make your own skyboxes in software such as Photoshop. I hope that this video has been useful for you, and thank you for watching.